All right, we can get started. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our regional spotlight session as part of a special series from the UN Global Compact Academy. My name is Alexandra Tarazi, and I'm a senior manager with the UN Global Compact. This session is going to explore perspectives from the Middle East on leadership in responding to this crisis. We are currently seeing the extent of the economic and social impact across the world and in this region. The pandemic is exacerbating already existing challenges and placing the most vulnerable at risk of being left even further behind. Meanwhile, varying economic priorities risk making it harder for previous sustainability efforts and commitments to stay in focus. Many of you on the line today may know that the UN Global Compact shared a special appeal for companies to take collective action through implementing our 10 principles in the areas of human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption. For each and every decision maker, the 10 principles of the UN Global Compact can provide ideas and inspiration in uncertain times and really anchor a response to this crisis that remains aligned with the SDGs. Our Global Compact local networks across the world, as well as in the Middle East, have not only amplified this UN Global Compact special appeal by translating it into many different languages, but have also launched a diverse range of local programming and activities. These include embedding COVID-19 responses into their already existing thematic working groups on issues from climate change to human rights, to holding virtual town halls, bringing different stakeholders together, to sharing good practice, and to also supporting food and medical campaigns. Today, you are going to hear from 3 companies from across our local networks in the UAE, in Lebanon, and in Jordan. In the next 15 minutes or so, we hope to uncover the lessons from responding to COVID-19 here in the Middle East and how we can ensure we are on track to achieve the SDGs. So without further ado, I'm now pleased to introduce our great lineup of speakers representing the UN, as well as the private sector. First, from the United Nations, Dr. Rola Dashti, Executive Secretary of the UN Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia. Dr. Dashti is a leading Kuwaiti economist and longtime champion for women's rights, gender equality, and democratic reform. From the private sector, we would like to welcome Raj Hattar, Chief Sustainability Officer with Aramex, an international express, mail delivery and logistics services company founded in Jordan. Since 2008, Raji has spearheaded Aramex's sustainability strategy. We're also happy to have Ibrahim Al-Zubi, Chief Sustainability Officer for Majd Futtaim, which is a leading shopping mall, communities, retail, and leisure owner and operator across the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. Ibrahim oversees the group-wide sustainability strategy of Majd Futtaim across all operations. Last but not least, Maissa Abou, who sits on the board of Holdal Adal Group, a third-generation family business operating in retail, distribution, supply chain, and manufacturing across various industries such as luxury, healthcare, personal and household care. He's also responsible for the group's CSR and SDG roadmaps and involved in various governance functions across the organization. With that, let's now kick off the panel. Dr. Dashti, let's start with you. ESCWA has released policy briefs on the socioeconomic impacts of COVID-19 in the Arab region. Can you please first share some of the main highlights of these reports with us? And in addition, if you can also speak on the impact of COVID-19 on the achievement of the SDGs in the Middle East. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra, for the invitation. And I think this topic is highly needed, especially bringing the private sector to the discussion on the impact of COVID. As we all know, COVID-19 pandemic is the defining crisis of our time. It's a people crisis and not a financial crisis. In our region, despite its diversity, the COVID-19 crisis has caused untold disruption, and the economic fallout from COVID-19 is accentuating existing inequalities, high vulnerability, and low resilience in the region. As you mentioned, ESCWA had done preliminary estimates on the impact of COVID since March, and these estimates are being updated as we go along because of the prolongation of COVID impact. And the preliminary estimates figures are very frightful, and I'll just mention a few. In addition to the losses of invaluable lives that reached around 2,090 deaths till yesterday, our revised economic estimates indicate that the region is expected to be in a recession in 2020 with a negative GDP growth rate of around -3%, hence resulting in an output loss of around $160 billion, up from $42 billion in our initial estimate in early March. And unemployment as a result is expected to soar to about 5 million job losses in 2020, in addition to the high unemployment rate in the region that is the highest in the globe of it, especially for the young adults, pushing around 27 million people into poverty, where we had where we had before 93 million people poor. Our first estimate, it was 8.3 million. Now we're seeing the impact because of the recession. It was going to be coming 27 million. So we're talking around 120 million poor people, which is almost 25% of the Arab population. And as a result, also we're seeing the middle income class shrinking, and those just above the poverty line sliding into poverty with a few safety nets into this. For the private sectors, FDIs are expected to falter by nearly 45%, resulting in an estimated decline in FDIs of about 18 billion. This, we haven't witnessed this at all in the region, even despite on the financial crisis impact, didn't have that much impact. Exports are expected to decline as the global demand and supply changes as disrupted, triggering around $88 billion worth of losses, and an additional $20 billion losses in fiscal revenues due to indirect taxes. As we know, also because of the recession, remittances, a lifeline for millions of families in the Arab region, are receding as labor migrants, migrant domestic workers, and high-skilled migrants lose their jobs and forced to return to their home countries. In addition to, we can't leave out also to mention that there is 55 million people in need of humanitarian aid, out of which 26 million are those forcibly displaced, either refugees or in IDPs, which are also threatened as a result of COVID. As you can see, COVID has no doubt significant negative impact on SDGs. Reversing some of the progress, which was slow to start with, made during the last 4 years. And from this, in terms of, we're talking about the inequality, we're talking about the poverty, we're talking about labor, let's talk about gender, we're talking about displaced people, the health sector that has been, but practically every single goal in SDGs has been impacted into COVID. And here we needed, the region need an acceleration, and this acceleration needs to be multiplied. We're talking about a decade of acceleration. We need to talk about a decade of multiplied acceleration. And we need more efforts and resources to be put in place to reverse the COVID impact and to facilitate the achievement of SDGs. And the key issue here is recovering better, and transformative change is the starting key in this. And I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dashti. We'll hear more about the measures that we need to put in place. So I'd like to now open it up to the companies on the panel. If you could please briefly reflect on the crisis and the impact that it has on your organizations, your employees, the communities in the countries where you operate, specifically in the Middle East. If you could also then give us concrete examples on what your company did and is still doing to mitigate the impact of the crisis. So Raji, let's start with Aramex. As a company providing logistics and transportation solutions on which we are very dependent upon, particularly in times of crisis. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Alexandra, and thank you, and good morning to my fellow panelists and all the participants. Well, the pandemic, as Dr. Dashti mentioned, it had a very major impact on everybody almost. We work in an industry that is extremely essential for all other industries because you cannot do anything without, transporting it, importing it, exporting it somewhere else. With all the closures that are happening around the world now, the international transport has been affected drastically. Airlines are closing down. Yesterday, we heard about 2-3 airlines that are going into bankruptcy. Ships were grounded for a long time. So basically, this impacted our industry as well as the other industries. And it impacted the communities that we are working in. Now, I'll look at it from two perspectives. One perspectives. One of them is that it's a disaster and it's impacting everybody. But again, it's creating opportunities for some industries that were not that they were not that important for some sectors. And it's also changing the business models around the world. Now, looking at us in Aramex, we tried to maintain our employees as much as we could. Actually, we started creating jobs in the delivery part of our industry, whereby now we are hiring under our platform fleet hundreds and hundreds of young people who are willing to deliver, who are sitting at home doing nothing because of closures of their businesses. So now we have hundreds of employees, temporary employees, for this part of the pandemic period. On the other side, for the communities that we are operating in, we started since day one supporting governments where we operate in delivering essential food and medical supplies. We also support the UN and especially UNRWA in our areas of operation to deliver their medication and other medical supplies that they need. And we continue supporting the communities we are operating in. So in a nutshell, it's a problem and it's an opportunity also, because we see lots of SMEs and startups that are coming up very fast in Jordan. I can talk about Jordan. Most of the government transactions with the citizens have been automated, and this was done through local startups and SMEs who are in the tech sector. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raji, for that overview. That's really interesting that you spell out both the challenges and some, if you can say, opportunities that have also come out as a result of this. So, Ibrahim, if you can now please tell us the impact on Majd Futtaim, particularly on your employees, communities, and stakeholders, specifically in the Middle East, bearing in mind that thousands of employees work in retail across your properties, many providing essential goods. Also, what actions have you taken in response to this pandemic? Thank you.
Thank you. Ramadan Kareem, everyone, and hope you and your families are well and safe. And I hope you are all staying safe and staying home. We're part of the whole community as well. So there was an impact, of course. The way we responded to the impact was in an early stage. The priority for us was the health and safety of our own employees, either it comes to their health, when it comes and well-being, as well as their social and economic safety and security when it comes to their financial incomes. From the beginning, we started responding to this epidemic and by creating crisis management committees across each OPCO across countries with empowerment on decision making there. So that was one of the main things we've done. On the spot, we prepared and implemented very strict health and safety measures, and we ensured that we emphasize on the existing operation we already have. So we work, Raji talked about the delivery, one of our main businesses, retail, Carrefour. So we own Carrefour in around 37 countries. And we wanted to ensure that not only our staff, but also the 500 million plus customers that come to our assets and rely on us when it comes to essential goods, that they have it, they have access to it, and they have it in a reasonable and the same price without any change on that price. So accessibility and affordability. That was one main part of us. The second part we've done, which we already had, and maybe because of this the situation we have, it became fast forward and it got some a big part of our business, which is working with local industries, going local. So we already have targets to work with the local suppliers, either when it comes to fresh food or SMEs. We tripled that target, and we're working on it. We opened clear channels with the government. And the main thing we've done is some of the operations that had stopped already, like the Vox cinemas and the entertainment. On the spot, we implemented a reskilling and upskilling training program where we got all the staff that the operations had to stop to support and help in retail and Carrefour. So we had more than 1,200 employees working from Vox and the leisure entertainment business, transferring in record time to support our retail and Carrefour operations to implement across countries, of course. So this is one of the main things for us. We've been impacted as well, with the social distancing. There is an economic impact, as I think Dr. Rola clearly mentioned it, and she shared all the numbers with us. So there is an economic impact, but we're doing our best to minimize that impact and ensure the health and safety now and the well-being of our staff and our employees and our customers as well.
Thank you so much, Ibrahim, for really detailing the steps that Futtaim took to address this pandemic and is still taking. It's really great to hear. Maissa, we look forward now to hearing from you, specifically from the perspective of a third-generation family business based in Lebanon. Amidst the ongoing economic, political turmoil Lebanon is facing, if you could tell us the impact COVID-19 has had on your company, its stakeholders, and what action have you taken?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Alexandra. So basically, the situation in Lebanon is quite special in that the COVID crisis came on top of an existing severe economic and social crisis. By the end of 2019, the poverty rate was impacting around 35% of the population, and that rate is said to have reached 50% with the COVID crisis. So the impact is extremely harsh. At Holdal, the first support to the crisis was the retention of our employees and the safeguarding of the ecosystem revolving around our business, as we're talking about hundreds of families in direct and many more when we include all stakeholders. The government being in a very tough situation, the private sector plays a unique protection role in Lebanon. So we had to make tough calls on expenses, review our business priorities, set up crisis management teams to protect our people and environment. To be more specific, for our employees, we defined quickly the community that was able to operate from home. We reviewed roles and responsibility to ensure everyone has a part to play. For the frontliners, we secured awareness sessions for social distancing and, of course, all the hygiene equipment required to ensure that they operate all safely. We also established an internal solidarity fund to support our employees that are on the lowest salary range, and this was crucial to us. For employees working from home, we encourage them to join e-learning platforms to keep developing themselves during these tough times, and also to be prepared for the opportunities that our panelists were talking about, because yes, it is very challenging, but also there are several opportunities that arise during any crisis. Because every human being deserves to live in dignity. Our board canceled their remuneration. Our senior management team decided to allocate part of their salaries to various families in need in vulnerable regions. As we are in multiple business lines, we used our factory to produce, for instance, hand sanitizers, offer thousands of gallons to pharmacies. We distributed 5 tons of bleach to prisons. We contributed towards the purchase of ventilator equipment for hospitals. We really tripled our efforts to serve families in need and NGOs with donations of basic need products. And this, in that context, we really tried to rally the forces with the private sector to ensure the sustainability of our initiative, because the needs are increasing every single day. What was remarkable throughout this crisis is that all the intrinsic values of our family business came to the forefront, with everyone participating to make these difficult times easier to handle. The challenges were many and will continue to be daunting after the crisis is over. So the true test of any company's values is in a crisis mode. I must say that I was impressed to see the ownership of our executive team and BCP committee leading the way and anticipating our business and people needs. I was impressed to see our heroes ensuring production and delivery to the community, as we have a duty to continue to operate for the safeguarding of that community. Our facility and IT teams who were essential in ensuring business continuity in the safest way, and the list goes on.
Thank you so much, Maissa. Thank you very much. So with that, I'd like to take it back to Dr. Dashti. You of course mentioned that there's an expected decline in GDP, and we clearly see that already existing inequalities and poverty are exacerbating. So if you can please just give us some thoughts on what measures you think are urgently needed to protect lives and livelihoods and build resilient economies, and then also specifically building on what we heard from Raji and Maissa and Ibrahim, what else can companies do to support these efforts around the region?
Thank you. Thank you, Alexandra. Maybe we'll start, because of this pandemic, I think we need a swift response using a comprehensive and inclusive approach that leaves no one behind. As we said, it's a people crisis. As such, we need investment in survival, investment in human survival, investment in business survival. In addition to increased spending on health, improving quality of life care, and extending health services, I think governments have to take measures and quick and swift measures to ensure that most vulnerable are protected. We also have to move fast to identify and help the new poor. Fiscal measures must aim to support people in need and sustain the economy by enhancing social protection schemes, stimulating the economy and boosting demand and job creation, supporting impacted businesses to reduce job layoffs, and extend the credit support and provide interest-free loans to small and medium businesses and self-employed. In addition, social solidarity measures must target the poor and vulnerable by implementing measures to ensure uninterrupted access to affordable food staples and basic necessities for vulnerable consumers, especially when the region imports more than 65% of its food staple need, and prevent hoarding and price gouging. And the private sector plays a key role here, as we just heard from Ibrahim on measures being taken from their side to ensure food supply into it. But we also need to make sure to ensure is that the prices, stability of the prices is extremely important, especially for decline and limited income and the poor people. And at the same time, what we heard from Raji is that the supply chain, the logistics, that ensuring also the logistics and the transportation are there. And this is extremely key issue. In addition, we always forget about the disabled people, elderly persons, and the disabled people which have limited or no social protection schemes. And this is, we need to extend our, enhance our social protection schemes to them. And there's a lot of, also we have almost around 74 million people in our region that don't have access to clean water service deliveries and hand washing and sanitizing material for cleaning, and they're living in slums and informal settlements and water scarce areas that we need to extend also our reach to them. As you say, all of this requires fiscal spending and requires money, but at a time this region and the governments in region has a limited fiscal space, and debt is compounded, and they can't have extra debt and additional debt. And this is where it's a call for solidarity among all stakeholders here. And this is where this these measures cannot be taken only by governments, and the private sector plays a key role into it. And in addition, what we're talking about, the private sector role in terms of food supply and the health supply, I think the private sectors needs to look now into how to become part of the solution and not part of a problem. And this key issue becomes in terms of retaining employees. And here is extremely important, because when you're firing, you're not firing a person, you're firing a family. And you're talking, it's a multiplier of 5 or 6. And if it's migrant paper, we're talking about furthermore, it's economies in other host countries and families. And the other thing is that supporting also the small businesses. I mean, big businesses now needs to look into how we support. They're impacted now, but they may be able to swallow the burden, but SMEs cannot swallow the burden, and the small SMEs. And here we're talking about, there's a lot of, for example, rental, reducing the cost of operation of SMEs in terms of delayment of rental and rental spaces, for example, extended the credit on their production inputs. And another thing is that ensuring that they could be part of their supply chain. I mean, their production, they produce a certain commodities, goods or services, that they will be adopted, so that we increase the supply chains with the local community or the regional community through the SMEs. And these types of measures is part of the solution. Yes, they're impacted, but I think also they can be part of the solution. The issue is now, the issue is not now the interest of the shareholders. The issue is not the profitability. The issue is the national survival. It's the community, the country survival. And this is, now we have to have a mind shift into the priority of the private sector and their objectives at addressing COVID impacts into it. So we need to have a mind shift within the private sector. And here we come back to the global compact itself. I mean, it could be a good start into it in terms of the principles of the global compact into it in terms of human rights, labor rights, protecting the environment, because here we're talking about revisiting our consumption and production systems, and the private sectors will play a big role into it in terms of recovering better and the green. And fighting corruption is extremely important. There's no space for corruption, and there is a place for transparency in the systems. Corruption is mini corruption or grand corruptions. There is no place of it, and the private sectors needs to be to come to that and uphold the principles of the global compact. It could be a starting guiding point. And in addition now, and I think it's the private sector now to play a bigger role in terms of the private-public partnership around the development issues. We always see the private-public partnership on issues that are profit generating. And I think now we need to strengthen the issue of private-public goods in partnership in public goods generation. Not only, this is the mindset, and the private sector could be a leader on this and proactiveness, and not to wait for the call from the governments, but I think they can make the call and move forward into it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dashti. You covered so many important points, specifically that more and more we see that the private sector has a really pivotal role. And to remind all of you again, thanks Dr. Dashti for calling out the Global Compact. The UN Global Compact has released a special appeal under its umbrella of Uniting Business for COVID response. And it really, again, brings the attention to the power of the 10 principles of the UN Global Compact to guide business leaders in responding to the crisis. So I do invite you all to take a look at this public appeal. And it's also, wonderful to hear from the companies on how they're really bringing this to life from the examples that we hear today on the panel. So I'd like to bring it back to our companies. Of course, we've seen that the COVID-19 crisis and the economic shutdown has severely tested corporate balance sheets. both from companies large and small, forcing even the most responsible companies to make difficult choices. So I'd like to ask each company on our panel, how are you keeping on your long-term commitments to sustainability that will, of course, underpin the road to recovery? So Raji, maybe we can hear from you first.
Sure. Actually, first I'd like to thank Dr. Dashti for laying out all these challenges that are happening across the region here and the importance of the private sector in combating all these issues. Public-private partnerships are extremely important, and as she mentioned, mostly private sector are looking at high revenue-generating, profit-generating projects like infrastructure projects or energy projects. What's happening now in the whole world, and as you mentioned, Alexandra, I was looking at an article of the CEO of BlackRock 2-3 weeks back, where he mentioned that sustainability might be the least concern now of private sector, and people will look at survival first, and then they'll go back to sustainability. From our perspective, and looking at what Aramex is doing and our long-term goals, till today we didn't do any shift on our long-term goals supporting the SDGs. On the contrary, we are increasing in some areas, especially when you look at the goals that we were not highly involved in, like the zero hunger or zero poverty. We are doing a lot in supporting local communities in delivering food, delivering medical supplies to them. On the environmental side, as we talk now, we are commissioning our second solar farm in Dubai. So this is moving forward. We are also looking at licensing 2 projects in the UAE, another 2 projects in Jordan, and another project in Egypt. We finished testing electric vehicles in Saudi Arabia, and now we are moving to the UAE. So on that front, we are moving very tough, very hard. And here I would like to explain one thing, that environment, usually any project that falls under environment is a profit-generating project, because it hits positively your bottom line. If it's energy-related project, then your electricity bills will go down. Electric vehicles will cut your fuel consumption. So the commitment from the private sector, I think it's a bit shaky now, but I feel that it's going to go back and gain momentum as we started seeing end of last year and beginning of this year. And I think the private sector can do a lot beyond this disaster. So it's not, we hope by end of summer, maybe the impact of the disaster will on the economies and the closures will be lifted. But it's way beyond that, and it's way beyond how things are going to happen. As Ibrahim mentioned, in the retail business, people now are buying online. Everybody is buying online now. So why would I have a big Carrefour, maybe, or why would I have malls? Would people be, willing to go to malls? In Jordan, we saw in the past month everybody opening electronic wallets, and they are paying through their mobiles. That was something that we didn't see in Jordan before. Now everybody is doing that, and the government is even transferring support to vulnerable communities through the mobile wallet. So now the technology is invading everything. So basically, private sector needs to look at their business models besides their support to the SDGs and the UN goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raji. Ibrahim, we welcome your thoughts on how you're keeping with your ambitious targets. Maybe you want to talk about reaching a net positive business model by 2040 and ensuring that these commitments are still very much on track.
Thank you. Dr. Rola, I think where we stopped in sustainability, or most of the companies, I hope at least Majd, Futtaim, and I'm sure the colleagues represent from the private sector, is where we stopped before the COVID-19 epidemic we have, is we know that it's beyond the shareholder value now. And unfortunately, with what's happened in the world now, maybe it looks like it's a standstill when it comes to sustainability. For us, as Majd Futtaim, sustainability is still a priority for us. And the first thing, again, our first response, we talked about the economic sustainability, is the redeployment and reskilling and upskilling of our staff that stopped working to deploy them in other businesses. For us, business as usual when it comes to sustainability, I think I can add resilience now to sustainability from the day-to-day work we do. And what we've done through a study that I co-authored with His Excellency, Dr. Al-Zubi, the Minister of Climate Change and Environment, we did a research paper on the new baseline for a greater collective action, which is mainly we studied the impact of COVID-19 on our environment and climate change. And this comes to, especially to our net positive commitment. The thing we had in mind is, although maybe the lockdown helped to help the environment a bit. We've seen lots of photos of before and after. So technically, this is not all good news. We know the history well. We know what happened in 2008 and the rebound with the stimulus packages to the financial stimulus packages to countries where they had a full speed in economic development after the recession in 2008. So that's a challenge for us. So we did that research. We come up with lessons learned, and I think this will help us to achieve not only net positive. I think this can be a roadmap for the world when it comes to climate change and environmental sustainability. One of the lessons we learned, by the way, is if one of us falls, we all fall. And COVID-19, I think, taught all humans that we are neither immune to coronavirus nor to climate change, and that's a fact, by the way. The second point is, and I think this is will help us as a roadmap as Majd Futtaim and regionally and globally as well, is prevention is better than cure. We've been waiting on investing in R&D and health, as Dr. Rola mentioned, on health prevention. And look, we're still waiting to see if there is a vaccine or not. Similar to environmental sustainability and climate change, prevention is better than cure. Also, Raji mentioned about the digitalization and how people were aware how to use other financial tools to pay for their goods. So the public needs to understand and learn about the gravity of the situation. So transparency is not a choice anymore. It's a main thing for companies and for governments as well. Also, although we're looking at local options, but there is a power of a global crisis, and environmental sustainability is a global crisis, by the way. We shouldn't forget that. Climate change is still a crisis, and it will be a crisis even post-COVID-19, and we shouldn't forget that at all. One of the points also we should look at, and that was a debate, and this is lessons learned also post-COVID-19, is we really need to trust the experts. When the experts say something, when scientists say something, listen and listen carefully. Also change behaviors. So we talked about the digitalization. Also, people can change behavior either from hygiene to social distancing to also to looking at new sustainable consumption behaviors. And most importantly, by the way, now we have a baseline. We have a new baseline. We have the numbers. We know how to track them. We know how UN knows how to work with, knows better how to work with different stakeholders as well as the private sector. So I see, I'm very positive post-COVID-19 on the public-private partnership that people will use tools such as the UN Global Compact principles. They are there off the shelf, such as the Paris Agreement to climate change. So from our perspective, either socio-economic or environmental sustainability, it's business as usual, if not even more. During the crisis, by the way, we had two main things that we even did not stop, and I'm so proud to share with the audience here. We had one of our malls in Egypt, although with the lockdown, we insisted to get the green building certification. So City Center Al-Maza in Egypt got green building certified LEED Gold during the epidemic, by the way. The other one is the projects we launched with the government on hydroponics. So we launched Dubai's first hydroponic store, in-store within Carrefour just a couple of weeks ago. And this is our third hydroponic plant. So people not only, we did not only reduce the transportation, and sorry Raji for that, but people can get their food an affordable price from the store, which is planted and grown in the store. And this is something we'll invest more on it. As I mentioned, we've been investing before, but working maybe one of the lessons of this crisis is we need to work more with local industries, regional industries, and SMEs.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim, for those remarks and for also clearly outlining how sustainability remains at the core of your business. Maissa, now to you. Could you tell us a little bit on what helps your company really keep the focus on sustainability?
Yes, for sure. So Holdal joined the UNGC and the Global Compact Lebanon in January 2018, supporting the 10 principles, but in reality, these principles have been an intrinsic part of our group since its very beginning in the 1940s. And this makes it quite easy because it's been part of our DNA, it's been part of who we are as a business, as a family business. So basically, at the end of the day, the alignment to the why we exist from the multiple stakeholders around Holdal has always been there. Resilience and agility are integral to our way of operating. And since our company was established, we have lived by these values of social, environmental impact, solidarity, goodwill, and care for the greater community. Because sustainability, impact, and ethics are at the core of who we are and what we do. And at the end of the day, it's always been about what do we create in terms of sustainable and responsible value in the very long run. It's never been about profits or shareholders return, etc. So it's been in the system for many, many decades. So the fact that we don't jeopardize the company's growth agenda, DNA, reputation, values, and family legacy over the company's growth agenda is actually has always been in the how we behave. Over the last 6 months, we have been working on the crisis management plan, I would say going back to September, October, to respond to the economic situation in Lebanon, way before the COVID-19 crisis hit us. We had established 5 task forces with different focus areas to ensure that we properly manage our business priorities, our people, our organizational resilience, and our engagement with all the stakeholders. So to respond to the COVID-19 situation, we were able to form a committee within a few days to build the business continuity plan, spread it throughout the organization within a few days. And I truly believe that as a family business, we're uniquely placed and can draw upon our past to take the right actions now. I was listening carefully to the panelists and to Dr. Rola, and when she says that we need to be part of the solution, which goes beyond the mission of the business, this is really, it's extremely in our heart and soul, and this is basically what keeps us believing in a better future every day. So we never sacrifice our long-term commitments to the SDG. We care about our SDGs, not just for external recognition. This is not important to us, but because we believe that this is who we are. I would say that despite the financial impact of the crisis and knowing that we have very limited resources, as we were already in a crisis mode and had identified the SDG as a clear long-term goal for us, the COVID-19 crisis has accelerated our commitment. And we fast-tracked several 2030 strategic goals and are now implementing an important part of the innovations and solutions in a very collaborative way, because we cannot own the solution by ourselves. We've also reviewed the 5 SDGs project plans for 2020 and involved our partners, our managers, to support our owners on the SDGs, our task force and volunteers in bringing some of our initiatives to life now. So the truth is, the less you have resources, the more you have to use your entrepreneurial mindset and collective social conscience to drive your actions. for us to accelerate our transformation. And because we believe this is key to our sustainability, we need all our managers, colleagues, and stakeholders to play a more active role in supporting the SDGs. And we're really trying to put a lot of effort in the collaborative approach to SDGs. And it's a very open approach and very inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maissa, for that input. That was very important to hear, specifically also coming from a third generation family business, given the situation that the Lebanese are facing today. So very interesting to hear your response. Dr. Dashti, can you please share some of your final thoughts on how the SDGs are our blueprint for recovery and for building resilience?
Thank you, Alexandra. I'll start with, yes, SDG is about recovering better from COVID and about collective social conscience, as Maissa just said. It's recovering with SDG is about eliminating poverty, zero hunger, reducing inequality, and women equality. Recovering with SDG is about changing our vision for education and the research and development in the region. It's unfortunately that everybody is trying to attempt to find a cure for COVID-19, and our R&D in the region is silent about it. Recovering with SDG is about revisiting our consumption behavior and production systems, climate change and sustainability. And this is where Ibrahim started saying, we need to look into, not for today also, but only for tomorrow, and the sustainability for our current generation and the future generation. And SDG is the path for that. Recovering with SDG is about building resilience, is about institutions and strengthening institutions. It's about partnership. And the most important partnership is the partnership between the public sector and the private sector and the people. And this is where it is a test. COVID-19 is a test about our partnership. It's about solidarity. And this is what SDG is, recovering with SDG. And finally, let me say that the SDG and the 2030 agenda are also about peace. And no development can come without peace. And especially this is a crucial issue in our region. And no recovery, no resilience without peace. This is a collective responsibility that all of us are sharing of it. Peace, we're talking about peace within society, peace internally, peace outside. I'm not talking only on political and war, but also peace within the system itself, the equality, the equity issues within the system. And all of us are partners of this. And SDG is the recovering path for it. Finally, the global community, as you all know, are calling for a decade of action and acceleration on the SDGs. And with the hit of COVID-19, we are speaking now a decade of recovery in addition to the decade of acceleration. But in our region, I think we need to call for another decade, a decade also in addition to the decade of recovery, a decade of acceleration, but it's a decade of peace, peace building and sustainable transformative change. And this is what we need in the region, and this can be done only in a solidarity. And this is what the whole thing is all about, solidarity among all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dashti. It's clear, as you noted, that the SDGs are the roadmap strengthening institutions, partnerships, and fostering solidarity. Some really great questions for today's session have come in from registrants that have been covered in today's discussion. A final question viewers want to know from the companies on our panel is around the main lessons learned from this pandemic and how we can ensure we recover better using this experience to accelerate progress towards a better and more equitable economy. So we have around 10 minutes or so. If Raji, you can start and tell us what are some of the key lessons that you would share with us.
Well, first of all, is that companies who were ready with technology were the first ones that managed to survive. So technology is a major player, and it has been always a major player. I look at Aramex. When we decided to work from home, it took us maybe 1 or 2 days, and all our employees were online, and they were working from home, and that did not disrupt our core business. The second thing is that the only constant thing in this world is change. things are changing very fast, and private sector needs to be ready for drastic changes. This also created opportunities. For example, in most of the countries where we operate, online learning was not an option. Now, with this learning from home issue that came up, this would be a good opportunity for increasing the number of people who will have access to learning rather than the conventional learning. So this would support the SDGs. While it's it's a result of a disaster, but again, it's an opportunity. So there are lots of lessons that were learned during this 2-3 months that we were. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raji. Those are some very important lessons. We see how technology has enabled many of us to obviously continue to work from home and support business continuity. So thank you for that. Ibrahim, if you can also share your thoughts on some of the key lessons from this pandemic.
Well, I did share some of the lessons learned in the previous, but briefly, so maybe I'll give the rest of my time to Maissa. She's been really, I think, speaking really well on behalf of the private sector, as well as Raji. This crisis will go, and we just need to be positive, patient, and agile. My only concern is the world does not stop when every crisis we have. We shouldn't rebound. We shouldn't forget where we stopped a couple of months ago. You talked about the SDGs. We shouldn't look for a new North Star. We already have a North Star. You want to make a change? We have the SDGs. So you need a roadmap. It's already there. It's been there for a couple of years, by the way. Maybe COVID-19 is just a small reminder for humanity that we need to start to stop, and we need to think and then act on how the business on sustainable and the new business model. We've been saying the last couple of years as a sustainability practitioners that business as usual is no longer exist. Technically now, business as usual is dead thanks to COVID-19. And a new, better business model, sustainable business model will come out of it, taking into consideration all the points and the clarification mentioned by Dr. Rola, the SDGs. It should be, and it must be, in the DNA of the business. If one lesson learned for me to advise any private business, any government, any decision maker is you really need to think differently. You need to think from a triple bottom line approach. You need to think of the planet and the people and the profit. It's the only way forward. It is the only way, by the way, to have a better and healthy life, which everyone, each one of us, wherever you are, any stakeholder wants to have for them, for their families, and for their stakeholders. So if I would like also the lessons that I shared in the previous question. If people would like to visit our website, there is a full study that we've done, either the Ministry of Climate Change website or our website. You have the full study there with full details on how we get out of these lessons and how we're going to embed them in the next couple of months in our businesses. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim. Maissa, we look forward to hearing from you on the lessons learned.
Alors, COVID-19 was a brutal wake-up call, and we all must emerge from it stronger. The opportunity to build on pre-existing strengths, coupled with the knowledge we can gain simply by looking around us through these extraordinary circumstances, might be the only silver lining to this crisis. Internally, authenticity and the core purpose of any organization is key to overcome these situations. At the end, as the end game has to be around a more equal and inclusive future for all. Externally, key partnership, we go back to these collaborations with other organizations or institutions that share the same core values will allow us to face any crisis stronger. For instance, I can go on and on with example, but I picked only one example that is currently in the pipeline. We built through the UNGC and GCNL the YSIP program, through the YSIP program, several collaborations with NGOs, social enterprises, and young entrepreneurs to help us embed circular thinking in the production and consumption of hygiene, personal care products, etc. This is just the beginning of a long, lengthy transformation journey on sustainability, but we are discovering so many hidden talents And it's fantastic actually to open your ecosystem and include all these great souls and minds into the thinking process and also into the sustainable agenda that you have planned. We've met inspiring actors of change in the past few months. The list of encounters during this challenging situation is endless, and I don't want to delay anyone. We actually use a motto, stronger together at Holdal, as we firmly believe that facing adversity together enables us to become better persons, be it parents, partners, consumers, employees, citizens. Ultimately, everyone has an important role to play, and the more we develop impactful collaborations and synergies, the better we can recover from crisis. The role that everyone has played during COVID-19 crisis will always have an impact long after the pandemic ends. A crisis is also a test of sustainability for organizations, and if anything, this crisis will prepare more businesses to rethink their model, review their strategy, their priorities, and prepare for disruption rather than being passive actors of change. Humanity needs more solidarity to defeat the global crisis. And if anything, as Holdal, for many years, we felt we were a little bit unconventional or not understood because we never jeopardized on the why we exist as a business. We never made any compromise, and now we feel a little bit more surrounded, more understood. So I'm really hoping that you know, we're going to be able to share and to collaborate and to co-create with more institutions to help our community and environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maissa. We are coming to the end of this panel. Let me once again thank all of our speakers for this interesting discussion on the impact of COVID-19 on this region, on how we have responded, what still needs to be done, on the key lessons learned, and how we can maintain focus on long-term sustainability. Thank you again to the audience for your participation. Please also join us this Thursday, 14 May at 10 a.m. Eastern Time for a Global Academy session on threats to critical global ocean supply chains, shipping during COVID-19, and on Tuesday, 19 May at 10 a.m. Eastern Time on Business Ambition for 1.5, Uniting Business to Recover Better. Finally, I invite you all to join us for the UN Global Compact 20th Anniversary Leaders Summit on 15 and 16 June. It will, of course, be virtual. You can register on our website. Thank you all very much, and goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you, Alexandra.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Stay safe.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.